And the biggest reason that we don't see more games is because of licensing issues. Microsoft and PlayStation, they don't have the license to emulate these games anymore. Welcome back to the Xbox Basement, everybody. With Microsoft officially announcing that they're doing away with physical disc media for their Xbox Series X refresh, I've been hearing a whole lot of blowback about we can't use discs anymore and things won't be backwards compatible. So what does backwards compatibility actually mean? And this may seem like a silly question. So backwards compatibility to me means that you can take your physical disc and you can put it into your console and it'll play like normal. Now technically backwards compatibility actually has to do with a digital download version as well. So if a game for like Xbox or Xbox 360 can be digitally downloaded onto your console, Microsoft actually considers that to be backward compatible. Well, where did all this start and why is this actually such a big deal for people? What do we actually care about going back and playing old games like from the Xbox or the Xbox 360? But let's find out where this kind of all started. And I am talking strictly console. So this actually all started with the PlayStation 2. So we can actually thank our good friends over at Sony for making this actually happen moving forward and kind of becoming some sort of a standard for video game consoles. Now, I was actually around for the launch of the PlayStation 2, and what Sony was actually trying to do was get people to upgrade their consoles. But something happened. I don't know if it's because the technology was just changing, everything was 3D now, or if it's because games were now on disc and people just kind of expected their disc to work, unlike Super Nintendo from Nintendo, which I was also around for, and I don't ever remember once going, dang, I really wish I could play this NES game on my Super Nintendo, or you know, I really wish I could put in this Sega Master System game into my Sega Genesis. At that time, it really seemed like nobody even cared about that kind of thing. But now that disc had become the standard, more people just kind of expected that they could put this disc into their new system and it should just work. And because Sony people wanted to buy their console, they said, hey, don't worry, your games will work on this new system. And that was absolutely true for the most part. Now, of course, not all games work. Here on Retro Dodo, they actually have a list of games that are actually not working for your PS2 that were originally on PlayStation 1. Of course, the Xbox came out and there were no backward compatible games because this was Microsoft's first system. Well, then the Xbox 360 comes out and people still kind of had this taste of like, hey, I should be able to play my original Xbox games. And I think Microsoft actually got this idea from Sony for backwards compatibility, and it just makes sense. Or at least it makes sense to you and I, the consumer. So enter the PlayStation 3. Just want to say a huge thank you to all of you guys who subscribe to the channel, and if you're not subscribed, consider doing that now. Now, the PlayStation 3 was backwards compatible with all PlayStation 1 games. However, only the original model is actually compatible with PlayStation 2 games. And I think this is what PlayStation was thinking. They were thinking, you know, that kind of thing is getting a little old. We have this brand new system, it's all HD, everything is upgraded, it's got Blu-ray discs now, and those older games are getting dated. People aren't going to be interested in playing the last gen stuff anymore. Of course, they couldn't have been more wrong because this was a massive outcry for people that said, hey, I can't play my PlayStation 2 games anymore. And Microsoft actually tried to win a lot of people over by saying, hey, your games will always play on your new Xbox. And you would expect because of this outcry that PlayStation would actually give some sort of compatibility with like their later models, but they never actually did for PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2, of course, is the best-selling console of all time, so you really think that they would have gone back and made this feature available for PS3, PS4, and Sony actually did what Microsoft is actually starting to do just now, is they made no more backward compatibility for PlayStation 2, unless of course you want to download PS2 games via PlayStation Plus or PlayStation Now, because backward compatibility runs off of emulation. The PlayStation 2 had a PlayStation 1 emulator in it. The Xbox 360 had an Xbox emulator in it. And when you get into emulators, you have to do legal emulation. And the biggest reason that we don't see more games is because of licensing issues. Microsoft and PlayStation, they don't have the license to emulate these games anymore. It's not exactly the same for us as a consumer, where if we have an old retro kart game that we can download a ROM legally and run it through some sort of emulator. Now, we have a legal copy of this game, so we can actually legally do that. But it's not the same for Microsoft or Sony Sony as corporations. They can't just say, oh yeah, we got this copy of this game right here, now we're going to distribute essentially copies of this game for these people to play on our systems. And that's why you'll get a lot of people, including myself, that would argue like, I've got this game disc, it says Xbox on it, why can't I just put it into my newer Xbox and play this thing? I've got a legal copy, I know that the hardware can support it, why isn't this thing just working? Now our good friends over at True Achievements, they actually keep a list of backwards compatible games. And then conversely, they keep a list of games that are not playable or backwards compatible. And you may notice that that list says Xbox One, and it's really because anything that'll play on the Xbox One will also play on your new series as well. And fun fact for you, all of your Xbox One games are 100% backward compatible for your Series S or X. Now that is not the case for Xbox and Xbox 360, so overall there's about 2,000 games for Xbox 360. And overall there's only about 500 games that are 100% backwards compatible in some form for Xbox One. However, that means there's also about 1,500 games that are not backwards compatible. I did the math in another video, which you can check out right here if you're interested, and some of these games are not nearly as cut and dry as you would expect. And that's why I personally consider a game to be backwards compatible something that you can just put in the disc and it'll just play. Because LA Noire is not backwards compatible, and LA Noire is actually on this list for a game that is not backwards compatible. However, if you search for LA Noire in the Microsoft Store, you will have an option to purchase and download and play this game. And that leads me to a positive, which Microsoft is actually doing for a lot of these games, is it's giving them enhanced graphics, it's giving them better frame rate runs, with overall improvements to the game using their new hardware. Now, I've heard the argument that some things on Xbox 360 just don't feel the same on a newer hardware system. And I can definitely see some of that. However, when they're giving an upgrade to the graphics and just a better run overall, I feel like that's a win. And believe it or not, Microsoft actually did this exact same thing with Halo 1 and 2. Halo 1 and 2, fun fact, are not backwards compatible for your system. That one blew my mind away, and I was like, how the heck are they not gonna make their trademark game backwards compatible? If there's any games that they should be doing that to, it should be freaking Halo 1 and 2. Of course, Microsoft's answer to this was, we have the Halo Master Chief Collection included with Game Pass, by the way, and while it's not a perfect recreation, they did their best to get these games enhanced for your new Xbox console so that you and I can play Halo 1 and 2. Now, if you're somebody who wants to use your current Xbox Series console, but you still want to play 360 and you still want to play original Xbox games, I did a whole video right here talking about how you can actually run emulators on these current consoles that'll play just about anything. And that's going to be your best option. There might be a little bit of argument for using a JTAG Xbox 360 to run a lot of original Xbox games, but you're still using older, non-modern hardware. And this is where I get to the point of actually saying, instead of worrying about backward compatibility, instead of relying on Microsoft and PlayStation and Nintendo for actually keeping these historical archives alive, maybe we would all just be better off picking up an Xbox or an Xbox 360 and just picking up all the old games that we love. Microsoft has actually gone on record saying that they spend about $1 billion a year for licensing. And if every single backward compatible game is costing them even a little bit of money, then they need to hedge their bets on what people are actually going to play. For example, does Microsoft really need to spend the licensing money to license Jimmy Johnson's Anything with an Engine? Does Microsoft need to make sure that Just Dance Kids is backwards compatible with your and mine Series X? Or any of these super old Maddens from years long gone by? Or how about this gem, Nickelodeon Dance? Yeah, Microsoft, I definitely want that on my Series X. And I'm sure I'm insulting somebody out there because they love every single one of those games and they absolutely want to play them. And if you really want those games, I'm sure that all of those titles can be picked up for an excessively cheap price, along with the secondhand Xbox 360 with a Kinect, for that matter, for about $40 to $50. I've got my Xbox 360, my Xbox One, and if I want those games, I will just go and get them. I'm not going to rely on Microsoft to make sure that they are backward compatible. And I would say the same thing for any PlayStation owner. If you want to go back and play those games in their original glory, pick up a PlayStation or a PS2. You can get them super cheap secondhand. You can buy big lots of games off eBay that are also super cheap right now. So overall, I would argue for building your own library that you can enjoy. Hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. If you liked it, go ahead and hit like down there on that button. I've been John, by the way, and we will see you guys in the next video.